Okay, I spent the last 10 cycles just cleaning up the base and putting down some decor. There's been some changes to decor recently, and I'm not quite confident giving any definitive answers yet. I want to play around with it a bit more before I really give any advice. For the time being, I'm just going to mention that some of the things I forgot to mention earlier on. That is, I've got this little pit down here at the bottom of my ladder system. I like to put one of those down there just because at some point you're going to crack open a pipe, ice is going to drop. Sometimes you're going to drop liquid at some point, and I like to make sure it's collected and it doesn't spread out across the base. I do the same thing up here on the landing. I like to split my landings in two so that yeah, this stops items from dropping too far, and if any liquid drops here, that tile will stop it from flooding into this room and instead force it down into my little collection pit. Yeah, water tanks. I tend to make all of these out of granite. Granite is one of the tougher minerals you can get. It can support 16 tiles of water pressure, if I remember correctly. So 16 tiles of water stacked on top of each other won't damage the granite. You don't want to use sandstone or sedimentary rock. I think sedimentary rock can only handle about 4 tiles of water pressure before it cracks. Sandstone is about 6 maybe. Igneous rock will do in a pinch. I think they can do about 12, maybe a little bit more. But I prefer to use granite just to be safe. What else was there? Okay, so next up we're going to be going with exosuits. We want to get our hands on exosuits because we want to expand down to the oil biome and get access to oil. I also want to start dismantling some of these slime biomes for polluted water so that I can, well, keep myself in oxygen for as long as possible. You can go around and start exploring without exosuits. It is possible. Let's do a screenshot mode here. You can start exploring other areas. It's quite possible to expand out and get a lot of views. But all you're really doing there is activating the plants and animals in the area. You're not really going to gain too much out of it. You can maybe get some vents or geysers, but most of them you won't really be able to utilize properly until you get your hands on some refined metals. And to produce large quantities of refined metals, it's usually more beneficial to go with the oil biome and use the oil for coolant and power. You can refine lots of metals using a foundry and polluted water. I don't know, and polluted water, but polluted water is not really sustainable when it comes to using foundries and refining metal. You're better off getting down to oil, which is why we're going to rush for the exosuits. Oh. To make those exosuits that we need to get to the oil biome, we're going to need to get reed fiber. Now I'm just looking around here and there's 5 reed fiber just lying around here wild, so we're going to have to gain access to that. I also found another group down here. There's 4 more reed fiber in here, so we're going to go and steal those as well. And there was also some over here. There was an extra 2 pieces over here. I'm just going to cut in here in the least germ way possible to get access to these. And we're going to use those reed fibers to get our early exoskeleton suits. I'm also going to take this polluted water here, and I'm going to start feeding it into reed fiber hydroponics. I'm just going to set up a little hydroponics here and set up 1 or 2 reed fibers. Reed fibers will consume an enormous amount of polluted water. I think it's 130 kilos per cycle. So this is a good way to get rid of this germy polluted water and get something useful out of it. Okay, Brains here has managed to actually get up to the point of general engineer. I've been specializing him after he got research assistant. He did gopher, courier, and now general engineer, all so he could move into mechatronics engineer. That was pretty much the main purpose of him, and I've been planning that since the beginning of the game. If I ever need someone to examine a geyser or something like that, I would definitely have moved him into research level 2, but only long enough to actually study it. By and large, I want to get him here. Now, this is a bit of a personal preference because the reason I'm moving him into that is so that he can build auto sweepers. Under shipping, you can build auto sweepers once you've researched it, but they require a mechatronics engineer to be built. No one else can build them. I find this useful because what I've done here is I've built it now. I've put in this little storage container and I filled it up with 5 tons of coal. I've limited it on coal because maybe I'll top up to 20 later. But what this will do now is, why are you disinfecting that? What the hell is going on? Okay. What he will do is, if any of these coal generators actually run out of coal, he'll pick the coal up out of here and he'll dump it straight into the coal generators. It just basically automates this so I don't have to worry about it running out. Because sometimes what will happen is these coal generators will get down too low, the power will run out before my duplicates can get around to filling it, and it causes a glitch, or a flicker in the network, which I don't like. Also cuts down on labour for my duplicates because my dog's body can actually carry about a ton of materials at a time, and carrying half a ton of coal around is kind of a waste. What I'm going to do is put this down to level 4 priority. Another thing is I'll probably set them up here as well, above my hatches. That's why I've left these storage containers here, though I do need to go on a sedimentary rock raid. You'll place another one of them up here, and that will allow these to actually draw sedimentary rock and later igneous rock and put them into the feeders automatically. What's happening currently is these hatches will eat 140 kilos, and then my duplicate will come along and fill them up at 140 kilos. I would prefer if I could put this on a lower priority, like 4. These are currently at 6, yeah, to make sure everything goes through. But I prefer to put these on a lower priority. They'll be taken care of when necessary and usually filled in bulk, usually 1 or 1.2 tons at a time, as opposed to them coming along and dropping off 140 kilos every time it happens. Whether or not you want to use this yourself is up to you, and if you're worried about the power grid, these only drain power when they're actually moving things. Currently, this will draw no power. Let's see. Yeah, auto sweeper. They don't actually draw power until they're active, so you don't really have to worry about them overloading your network. And currently, most of the stuff on here won't be active, like oxygen diffusers. Don't need them because oxygen's being piped in. They'll only activate if there's an emergency. The research station supercomputer, only one of those will ever be active at a time because I only have one researcher. The liquid pumps, what do I have? 2? Oh, yes, this one. This one will activate once a day and pump 300 kilos of water. It's actually quite a lot. But our other one down here is only actually feeding our bristle blossoms, and that you're looking at about 120 seconds of both of those pumps being active, or one of those pumps being active roughly. So by and large, our power draw is quite low. You don't really have to worry about it too much. This just helps automate things and reduces the stress on your dog's body, because currently this duplicate is the only... How are they hungry? Yeah. No, I'll figure that later. This one is the only one actually doing most of the general all-round work. Everyone else is doing building, researching. That's it. That's why their athletics is so high and everyone else is so low. Now, next up we're going to... I've managed to access all these areas. Oh, actually I'm not finished there. I've cracked open most of these areas and I've got access to enough reef fiber. So we're going to build exosuits. Exosuits are a little bit odd. The reason exosuits are odd is they only work with copper ore. You can only build exosuits out of copper ore. You cannot build them out of any other ore. You can't build them out of any other material entirely. Even if you refine copper ore into refined copper, that refined copper cannot be used to build exosuits. So, yeah, don't turn all your copper ore into refined copper. I've heard of that happening to a few people, and if you do that, you can't actually build exosuits. The only way you'd be able to get exosuits, because copper ore is only present in your starting biome. It's not available outside. I actually started in a biome with way too much copper. If you refine all your copper and you have none left, you won't be able to build exosuits, because the only other way to get copper ore is to go to space. That's the only other place that actually has copper ore. Is it activated yet? Yeah. See, that auto sweeper actually filled that without my duplicates having to come along and do anything. Yeah, took out half a ton of coal. And because I'm able to lower this priority down, my duplicates will get around to that when they're ready. No rush. There it is. Atmo suits. 2 reed fiber and 300 kilos of copper ore, specifically. Don't refine all your copper ore. Another thing, the fire poles I put down. You may not always be able to afford fire poles as early as I put them down. You can get copper starved at the start. Usually you end up with more something else, usually algae or sand maybe, but if you get copper starved at the start, you may not be able to build these out of copper. Usually in that case, if I was copper starved, I'd probably go find like a big vein of iron ore like this, or maybe some gold amalgam in a slime biome, and I would use that to build the ladders out of, but that would probably have delayed me a bit. Another thing when dealing with slime, I never really covered this, you can usually get around mining any of the slime. You don't want to actually mine the slime itself, because if you mine slime, it decays into polluted oxygen that contains slime lung. That is a problem. While it's in this state, it won't actually give off any gases or cause you any problems. The only reason you're going to get slime lung is because you mined some slime and it turned into polluted oxygen, which then will infect your duplicants. Don't mine slime if you can avoid it. I think I've only mined 1 or 2 pieces of slime so far. Let's see. Let's make this a granite. Like for example here, if I want to get access to this sedimentary rock, which I do, it's actually just too much slime around. So what I'll do is I'll just actually go down through here, avoiding all the slime. Is that clay or slime? No, gold. And then this allows me to get in here and core all this area out. We don't care if some of these pieces are actually infected with slime lung. For example, this clay here has slime lung in it. We don't mind that. Slime lung on other solids doesn't matter. It only matters when it's on something that turns into a gas. The only time you're really going to encounter that is if you mine slime itself. Um, So for this thing over here, I'm not going to hook this up to my main grid. It draws way too much power. I'm going to create a second power grid with a couple of coal generators to run this. And then I'm going to use that same power grid. Once all the suits are made, I'll then use that same power grid to run the exosuit station. And we'll come back when that's about ready to go. Okay, did some more decor testing and I've finally come up with what I think is going on. The biggest change was apparently that there was now a maximum decor value. For example, if you look there, total decor plus 120 maximum decor. This was presumed to be the biggest change to decor, and it meant you couldn't really stack up areas with decor like I've done right here. However, after a bit of testing, let's go grab someone here. Say, Dig Dug, how are you doing on decor? What's your previous decor value? As you can see down at the bottom there is average decor this cycle and average decor last cycle. What this is a listing of is every second of the cycle, there's 600 seconds in a cycle, it notes how much decor the duplicant is exposed to in the tile they're standing in. It adds up all 600 seconds of that and then divides it by 600 to average it out for the whole cycle. Now, as you can see there, they have an average decor last cycle of 165, which if the maximum decor value was 120, that would be impossible. So it seems while this text currently does say you can only have a maximum of 120, it is not apparently implemented, not on a duplicant level. So for the time being, you can still, well, stack areas with massive amounts of decor and just use that to help counteract the negative decor outside of your main living areas. For example, I've just made most of the living areas heavily decor orientated, so they get so much exposure when they're back home, it usually maxes out their decor values for the day. That said, usually the best thing to go with is make everything out of granite because granite gives a 20% bonus, and usually go with large sculpting blocks. Large sculpting blocks, pretty handy to get your hands on, and they work out a lot better than these marble blocks. Marble blocks take up twice the space, but only give 1.5 times the decor and have the same radius. They're just not worth the effort. Stick with the large sculpting blocks. Metal blocks, they're great, but they cost 400 refined metal, so you're not going to be throwing that around the place. The smaller sculpting blocks are usually not worth it. You're better off holding it for the larger ones. The other thing that's important is hanging pots. These hanging pots, they've effectively replaced paintings now. Paintings require reed fiber. Reed fiber is heavily important for Atmo suits and Snazzy suits, so you're not going to really have paintings early on. These actually work out better than paintings because you can stack 2 of them in the same area as a painting, and they give a better decor bonus with slightly less radius. One thing, don't put crown moldings above them. If you put crown moldings above them, you can't fit the plant in. It seems that takes up the tile. The crown molding takes up the tile, so if I tried to put crown molding there, I wouldn't be able to put a plant in the planter. Took an embarrassing amount of time to figure that out. But yeah, just something to note. So currently you can still just stack living areas with enormous amounts of decor, and that should pretty much cover it. I'm going to try and get into spreading out my decor more as I go along, but for the time being I just decided to redo everything that way and waste way too much time doing it. That's why I just like getting into decor early. It has a tendency to soak up a lot of time. You look around and it's been 20 cycles and you've burned them just beautifying your base. Anyway, or was I? Yeah, consumables. You'll notice here everyone's happiness now is well off the charts. I basically wanted to get everyone above 20. The reason I want everyone above 20 is so we can assign them into exosuit engineers when it becomes available. We have constructed all the exosuits necessary. I've got, I think, 12 of them. Yeah, I want to put 12 because I'll eventually max out on 12 duplicants. I constructed them all, and I've been strip mined out all the reed fiber I could find. Now I'm just going to pull out of these areas, seal up my base on this side, and then I'm going to break out through here with my exosuits and start dismantling whole areas for resources. That's going straight from my oxygen tank. Now I haven't covered research in a while, and yeah, we've gone through a lot of research. I should have covered this as we went along, but just didn't think to do it. First thing I suppose we should cover is the electrolyzers, the tech you need for it. Uh, the main things I like to get is I do like to get this HVAC so I can get the gas reservoirs. I consider it quite important. You're also going to need improved ventilation for the Atmo sensor. Those Atmo sensors are necessary for controlling the pressure in there, and if you don't have them, it's not going to work very well. The other thing you're going to need is, of course, the actual electrolyzers themselves, and you're going to need distillation so you can get water sieves. I consider all of those necessary to do a decent electrolyzer setup, though you can make a more ghetto version that doesn't need as much. Uh, Next up is, what was the tech after that? Yes, the exosuits. Once you've got the electrolyzers tech, the exosuits is just a short step. It's literally just these two things here, and normally I maxed out all the decor items because I wanted to explore them and see how they worked. So I already had all of the textile production and everything down there done already. Uh, Next, I'm going up and I'm getting the low resistance conductors and getting at fossil fuels, plastic manufacturing. I want to get to oil in a reasonable time frame, and I want to get all this research knocked out of the way so I don't have to worry about it when the time comes. Oh, and along the way, I picked up smart storage and smelting. I wanted smart storage so that we could get down these auto sweepers, and I'm willing to to smash a lot of rocks together to get these auto sweepers up because they save me an awful lot of effort. Oh, one last thing on decor. These statues all give plus 30, and they have a radius of 8 tiles, which is why they're so useful. They're the right combination of distance that you get out of them and actual decor that they give you. For some reason, though, these archer statues, they give plus 24 decor for no apparent reason. They're made out of the same material, same artist made them, but for some reason, all the ones that have bows, I think it's just an oversight. They just have less decor, so you can demolish those and replace them. I'm not going to do it right now because I don't want to waste the time. Oh, you also get access to carpet tiles now. Don't bother. They're not worth it, not even a little bit. It's not even so much the reed fiber. It's, say, here's a sandstone tile that gives plus 5 decor with a radius of 1 tile. This gives plus 10 decor with a radius of 1 tile, but doesn't even give a run bonus. Sandstone tiles give a 25% run speed bonus. The most decor any duplicate is going to be exposed to from tiles with a 1 tile radius is 3 tiles. If they're standing on this tile, they'll get a bonus from this and this. Works out at about 16 and a half decor points for these 3 tiles of sandstone. You could double that and get maybe 32 to 34, depending on what you make it out of, if you switched it all to carpet. Of course, it's going to cost you reed fiber, and you'll have to make it out of granite, and it's just not worth the time investment, in my opinion. Time is water, or polluted water and oxygen, and my tank is starting to run lower than I am comfortable with. Crown molding's definitely worth it. You can put them around the places. They have a radius of 3 tiles, so you can actually stack up the effects. Like that tile there is affecting 1, 2, 3. It's hitting to the ground, and 1, 2, 3 tiles to the left. So all of these tiles here are affecting this one spot where my duplicate will be standing. Oh, and for beds, just be aware that for decor purposes, duplicates are considered to be in the bottom leftmost tile, so you can stack up decor correctly for them. Okay, my polluted water tank here that's feeding my electrolyzer setup is starting to get a little bit lower than I'd like. So here's a little trick you can do where you can just, well, extend it by digging through to areas that have water and just letting them flow down. It just, water goes downhill. I do have to dig through some slime, unfortunately. But water flows downhill, and you can effectively arrange this so that you don't have to do anything or pump it. You can actually pump water in here by finding, say, a stack like this, putting a water pump in, hooking it up to a coal generator, and moving the water. You can get about 6 tiles of water a turn. But using this, you can normally flood areas pretty rapidly. Okay, now I'd like everyone to pick up that slime and take it home. You may lose some of the pacu fish along the way if you've got to do this, but it is, like for example, I'm going to dig in here next, and I'm going to release that water as well. And I'm pretty sure there's a water pocket up here that I can also release. And if I just dig correctly, I can have all this water flow down into my tank and make sure my oxygen keeps going. Okay, We've secured a bunch of water to make sure that we've got a good supply of oxygen going on. And then we've got our exosuits up. Now, when you're putting in your exosuits, there's a few different ways of doing this. Some people just run a pipe right along the bottom and run pipes up. That usually works just fine. However, if you get any oxygen interruptions, it can be quite hard to catch back up again. I've had that problem. So what I've started doing is using these little bridges here and then run 4 pipes off that to separate out the flow. I'm still producing about enough oxygen to fill this all, but it's taking a bit of time for everything to catch up. What I also like to put in is this emergency little setup here. It's a couple of oxygen diffusers hooked up to a couple of air pumps, and they can feed in here through this pump here into the system if I need. That's great for starting the system if you have any problem with your electrolyzer setup, or you let it back up too much, or you have any problems. Just having this little emergency system here means you can boot things up, because if you lose access to the outside world because you've no oxygen for your exosuits, it can become problematic. I've just stuck in an old-fashioned switch here. I know it needs manual activation and I'd probably be better off with a pressure sensor, but I like the old switches. I've stopped collecting slime automatically anymore. I'm going to actually leave the slime out. I kind of want it to off-gas. Even though this whole area is going to be full of germs, I don't care. My duplicants are in suits, it's not going to affect them. And I put out deodorizers to turn the polluted oxygen into clean oxygen. And eventually the slime lung germs will die off in that. They can't survive in clean oxygen. It'll take about 30 or 40 cycles for it to die off, but I'm in no rush. Most of the duplicants now, this whole base is basically sealed. I've put in a door down here to block this off, and effectively I'm just going to start demolishing this whole area of the map all the way down to the oil biome. We're never going to be sending duplicants out here without a suit. One thing about the power requirements for these, you'd think their power draw was 120 kilowatts per, or 120 watts per second, but it's not actually that way. Think of them like a doorway. When they actually put on the Atmo suit, it draws 120 watts, and when they take it off, it draws 120 watts, just for a second, about the same amount of time as a mechanized airlock. It's basically a mechanized airlock to put on the put on the Atmo suit, and then same cost again when they take it on and off. It's basically nothing. As well as that, we've got enough Atmo suits. I stockpiled, I think, 12 of them, so I've plenty to keep me going for a long time. And currently, we're working on Snazzy suit. Snazzy suits here, they're very, very insanely useful. I can't really stress that enough, especially when it comes to decor. You basically assign these out to someone. Let's take Dig Dug. Yep. They'll show up at some point to put them on. Occasionally they're a little bit slow about getting around to it. Wait. Let's show on the decor overlay. Now, if you look here at the decor overlay, you can see in negative traits, Dig Dug's outfit is -5. By default, all these sort of knockoff Star Trek uniforms they're wearing give them -5 decor. However, once they put on a snazzy suit and they take a move, they have to move first before it actually takes effect. You'll see here he's now got +30 for Dig Dug's outfit. The moment they put on a snazzy suit, they get +30 decor. From -5 to 30, that's a 35-point swing. And not only that, even when they put on an exosuit, why is he not going outside? You know what? Maybe I have no commands for him. Put on an exosuit. Even when they have an exosuit on, it still counts. Oh yeah, you can see the -5 for Brains Doug outfit there. That means there's a radius on these suits and on the knockoff Star Trek uniforms. So this suit has an actual radius to it. I can't remember what it was. Let's see. It's about, yes, I think it's 1, 2, 3 tiles. Yeah, 3 tiles. So this reaches 3 tiles, meaning when he's up in bed later, if he's in this bed, his suit will actually affect the duplicants on either side of him, giving them a 30-point decor bonus as well. So these are quite powerful for getting up the happiness of your duplicants. I would recommend you get everyone into a snazzy suit as soon as you've got enough Atmo suits to be comfortable. After that, one snazzy suit for everyone. Now, last thing, I'll go through the duplicants I've been hiring over the course of this. I kind of haven't really covered those. You've got the Beastie Doug, who's the beastie duplicant who's handling critters. Then you've got the art dog who handles art. Then I got a second one for handling the critters as well because I am going up to 24 hatches. I'm not quite there yet, but I hired one in advance to make sure everything got done. Two tinker dogs there to operate the machines. So I'm going to be operating oil later on and stuff like that, and I want a couple of dogs who are going to be operating that. In the meantime, before machines come along, they'll be just digging and constructing with everyone else. And then a second dog's body is my ninth duplicate. I took my time picking this one because I wanted them to have decent stats. And this is a dog's body out because these doors down here will be locked for your regular dog's body. I do want my dog's body leaving the base. My first dog's body, their job is just to keep everything inside here running nice and smoothly. If any resources need to be fetched from outside, my second dog's body can go and do that. I've also banned the beasties from leaving. I want them entirely grooming these critters. I don't want them running off to do something else and getting sidetracked for so long that they don't have time to groom the critters, which means I won't be getting eggs. I've also dug up a bunch of the bristle blossoms. I've been doing this slowly over the course of the game, just getting rid of bits of them as more and more eggs come online. This has been reducing the draw on my water, which is still looking okay. I'm getting uncomfortable with it, but basically you can start digging. The moment you've got about 8 to 12 hatches set up and running, I usually start digging up the bristle blossoms. Currently I'm just cutting down here. I want to cut under the slime biome and put in a water tank. I want to capture all this polluted water because that polluted water is basically oxygen. And ooh, there's even more over there. There's also a cool steam vent over here. I'm not going to tap into that yet. We're going to pretend that doesn't exist for now, and we're going to assume you weren't lucky enough to find one, and that you have to just survive on what's available around you. After we've dismantled most of the slime biome for water, sedimentary rock, and gold amalgam, we'll then move on to getting oil, and we'll move on to there's nothing. No. Then we'll move on to getting more oil and getting oil sorted and large-scale refinement, and we'll put together an industrial block that will do all our production, refined metals, plastics, glass, and a large power plant to go along with it. Occasionally you're going to encounter these locker rooms. They have the ability to inspect, but also to rummage. And if you rummage through them, you can possibly find some snazzy suits. Also warm sweaters and other stuff, but we don't care about those. Also, they have a tendency to disinfect all the tiles, which we don't want them to do. That is so annoying. So what you can do is either you can deconstruct all these tiles, but you can't actually get rid of the lockers, or you can just disable disinfect on all of them. Yeah. It's of course frustrating and you have to go through it all, but it does actually make life a little bit easier because your duplicates won't keep coming along and trying to disinfect everything. Okay, end of cycle 100, start of cycle 100. Have dismantled most of the slime biome to secure all the water, and I let the slime just off-gas a bunch of polluted oxygen, and now I've spammed the place with deodorizers. At this point it'll turn everything into clean oxygen. Eventually this will be habitable, but I'm not actually going to use it for that. I just want to have gas pressure in here so that it will force carbon dioxide down and chlorine and put hydrogen at the top. It gives a nice gas separation. But now all this is done, I'll do a bit of tidying up, put the slime away, and then we'll go down for oil. Okay, it's turn 110. I'm in screenshot mode here just to show you what's going on. We've managed to just clean up that whole slime biome and put in blocks, and then we've dug down here to the oil biome. Now, from painful experience, I've learned to put in a little pit here before you go into the oil biome. This is to catch liquids. Stuff is going to fall down. Usually polluted water or clean water is going to end up dropping down these ladders. And if it drops directly into your oil biome, you're going to end up with water, polluted water, all that stuff floating along the top. Some of it turns into steam. It just gets, it messes with it takes a lot of processing power and it can slow down your game and it just looks terrible. I prefer to actually put in a pit now, catch all the liquids there just in case anything happens. And I've actually started including water locks now to exclude gases. Most of the gases in here is carbon dioxide. You'd occasionally find some sour gas or something like that, but in general it's all carbon dioxide. And I like to seal it off, make sure that's all that's in there, and it generally helps the game run faster. So all I've done is here I've set up a quick pitcher pump on the little bit of crude oil I first cracked into, and now I'm just dumping that in with bottlers using the you get the enable auto bottle, and it will pick up this crude oil and dump it in here. When you're filling these up, just be aware that you want to have about 200 kilos of water in these side pockets, the ones here and here. Those ones are the ones that count. The middle one will end up with about 870 or so, but you're going to need to keep pouring until the amount of crude oil in this pocket and this pocket is about 200 apiece. Okay, water lock is finished. I sucked out all the oxygen. This is all carbon dioxide now. Then you continue on down after that, and you just go straight down to the bottom. I'm going to make a pit down here and collect all the crude oil. There is lots and lots of crude oil on these maps. It's the most abundant liquid on in the entire game as far as I'm aware. Actually, I'll load up a save now in a second. Okay, this map was strategically edited with the sandbox tool, and I did a bit of, well, this map here was cheated like mad, and what we did was we dismantled the whole oil biome and let all the oil drop to the bottom of the map. We deleted all the magma and all that stuff, so there was a nice, tank to collect it all. So basically, this is all the oil that fell out of the oil biome. Bear in mind, this is only cycle 3. There's no way this isn't from vents or anything. This is just what's there by default. It's about 6 to 8 tiles deep, depending on which side of the map you're on. It's a bit viscous, so it doesn't even out. But there is a absolutely ludicrous amount of oil in the oil biome. Now, I did this with 2 maps to make sure it wasn't just, a fluke. This one had the least oil in it. So oil will last you a long time, definitely 500 to 1,000 cycles probably, depending on how much you're spending. So that's why we're going to invest in oil. Okay, so I made the one mistake I swore I wouldn't make again. I almost let the hydrogen back up here. The hydrogen is flowing into these two hydrogen generators here, and when they don't need any more, it overflows into these 3. And I was using these as overflow tanks. But you really need to have an overflow for the overflow, because if this all backs up and the hydrogen backs up into here, it's the only thing that can actually break your electrolyzer system. So I emergency built one of these tanks here, and this is just going to be fed into a hydrogen generator down here, which will feed into my power grid. This is just to burn off the hydrogen. This is not going to be hooked up to a smart battery. It's just any hydrogen that comes down here, instantly burnt off. I don't want it anymore. I've already got 3 spare tanks up here that I'm going to be using later. But yeah, one thing to note, never ever let your hydrogen back up. You always want to have it going somewhere or burning it off. It's the only thing that can actually break your electrolyzer setup. Is it cycle 125? Fine. What I'm doing at the moment is I'm clearing out an area to build your industrial base. I've got the oil, a little bit of oil collected down here, but I still have to crack open a bunch of places. For example, you'll see oil with these really high numbers here, like 2,800 kilos per square. That's actually compressed oil. When you crack that open, it will spread out. It's the average size of an oil patch is about almost 900 kilos. So when you see these areas with heavy compression, you know that if you crack that open, it's just oil will shoot out of it like a geyser. So we're going to crack open more of that later, but for the time being, I'm just going to start getting the industrial area up and get some ceramics out, because we're going to need that to handle the heated oil.